Hello, and welcome to another discussion with Professor Choi. One of the things that I notice when I'm teaching my classes is that I have a lot of students that are in their early 20s and or late teens. And one of the things that I like to do as an economist is I like to help them kind of figure out how to have a better future early in life. And I wish somebody would have helped me with a lot of this stuff at the beginning because it would have saved me a lot of trouble and ultimately it would have made me more money also in the future. So the series that I'm doing right now, or at least this video, is part of something that I'm calling Simple Steps for a Better Future. And there was a different video where I talked about general financial advice for young adults. And then I said that if you're a young adult, one of the best things that you could do, the 5 basic things that you need to be doing right now, is you need to become money aware, you gotta have or you need to create a budget, you need to open a retirement account, you need to avoid high interest credit card debt, and you need to finish college or become an entrepreneur. Today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be breaking down each one of these. So I'm going to create 5 more videos to explain each one of these. So today, we're going to be on the first one. First one says, become money aware. Alright, so how do we become money aware? One of the things that I notice all the time is that people don't really know where they're spending their money. Like I just walk up to them and ask, hey, how much do you spend on food? And they go, well, and then after that, well, no, about a month. How much do you spend on food a month? And they look at a blank stare. You need to become money aware. You need to know more or less how much you spend on everything. Now, everybody might not want to take it to the extreme. Like in my particular case, I have software in my computer that basically tracks all of my expenses and all of my income. And I've been doing it now since the year 2003. So I have extremely good data on how my income and my expenses have developed in the last 15 plus years. Now, again, like I said, maybe you don't want to be doing that because that takes too long. But at least start becoming money aware now. Now, how do we do that? So first thing you need to do is you need to figure out how much money you make. You can't make money unless you actually make money. So, you can make money by either working or by making somebody else work for you, getting your own business, I don't know, hitting the lotto. But the point is, you gotta know how much income is coming in. Now, eventually, when you get a regular job or if you already have it, one of the things that I always recommend is you need to make sure that your income increases at least 3% a year. Now, why 3%? Well, it has to do with inflation. If you look at inflation in the US in the last 20 years or so, it's been around 2% to 3% inflation. So in order to keep up with inflation, in other words, in order to keep up with the rising prices, your income has to grow at around the rate of inflation or higher. Now this is just to maintain your income level. If you want to grow and have more money, then the idea is that your income has to grow faster than inflation. If your income grows faster than inflation, then in the next few years, you will be wealthier than you were before. The next thing that you need to do is you need to figure out your expenses. On my second video on this group of videos, I will be talking about how to create a budget. So if you're interested in that, we'll talk about how to make a budget on the next one. So look forward to that and watch it later. Now, expenses in general, you have to kind of sit down and you need to create a list of this is how much I spend on that, this is how much I spend on that. You could do it by keeping track of the expenses every time they happen, or you could do it by creating like an Excel sheet with all those expenses, or maybe you want to maybe use a credit card or something like that and then look at the expenses there because they list all the expenses that you have. In one of them I do say don't get into too much credit card debt, so if you do carry a credit card, make sure you pay everything at the end of the month, because if you pay everything at the end of the month, you don't get charged any interest. Alright, the next thing you need to start looking at is what are your assets? Assets are a thing of value, and counting your assets is basically how much you are worth. Of course, if you're young, what normally happens is you don't have a lot of assets, you have expenses, but you don't have a lot of income. Alright? But again, as you get older, counting your assets and knowing how much you have becomes important. Now, what exactly are your assets? Again, any balance sheet on a bank account, any, let's say you own a house, the value of that. You own a car, the value of that. Maybe you own, I don't know, extremely expensive Nike shoes or something like that. Okay? So count the value of the assets that you have. Now remember to count something at market value, not at the price that you paid. And these are different things. Like for example, when I bought this shirt, it may have cost me, let's call it $30. But if I were to sell it today, they wouldn't give me $40 for it. So when you're counting the value of your assets, count the value at market value. In other words, if you were to sell it today, then how much money would somebody give you for it? Alright, you got to take a look at your liabilities. Liabilities is the money that you owe someone or something that could cost you money potentially. For example, if you have a used car, for example, you know that used cars break down. So you need to think about the liability of owning that. You know, how much am I going to owe someone if the car breaks down? How much am I going to have to spend on that? You need to start thinking about debt payments. A lot of students graduate with debt. And this is very much common today. I think the last time I heard an average on this is somewhere around $35,000 per student. It's about the average. And that's about how much I graduated with in debt when I got my master's degree. Alright, next thing you need to start thinking is about your plan for the future. And how's that related to becoming money aware? Well, you got to have a money plan as well. So you always got to think, you got to start thinking with a goal in mind. Because things in life are not just going to happen in one day, they're going to happen as a progression of events. So you got to start where you are now, and you got to start thinking about where you're going in the future. One of the major things that I explain to students all the time is that you need to start getting experience today. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, I had a student that said, well, I want to be a lawyer. You know, we were doing this exercise in class and we're thinking, okay, where do you want to be 10 years from now? He said, well, I want to be, you know, out of law school and hopefully getting a job. And I said, great, that's an excellent plan. You know, most lawyers make at least some money and hopefully 6 figures. But I said, what are you doing right now? He said, well, I work at a pizza place. And then I looked at him and said, okay, so when you're going to apply to go to a law firm, you're going to say you work 3 years in the pizza place. And they're going to say, exactly, the experience doesn't match. So what do you need to do? As soon as you can, you need to start matching your experience to your future. In other words, let's say you want to be a teacher, like Professor Choi. Get teaching experience. You can't get teaching experience? Get tutoring experience. Can't get tutoring experience? Get experience working at a school. Volunteer at a school. Find a place where your experience matches your future. Because that helps a lot on the moment that you're going to be using that for later. Because you could say, okay, well, I used to work in a school helping other teachers how to do this, and there you go, you have experience. If you work at a pizza place and you want to be a lawyer, these two numbers don't match. So you need to start changing your present to start matching your future. Alright. I want you to start thinking about retirement. I know we don't do this enough, especially when you're young, but the best time to start saving money for retirement is when you're really young. So, what you need to be doing is you need to be setting up a monetary goal for when you retire. And you need to start saving for that goal now. My basic recommendation is you gotta save 10% of your income every year. So you need to put it aside 10% of your income every year. And another thing that I always tell my students is, you pay all those bills, why don't you pay yourself first? The first bill that you pay should be to you. Because you're working really hard for all this money and everybody else is taking your money. Why don't you pay you for all this hard work you've been doing? So savings for your future should be paramount and it should be included in every budget. Please start saving and thinking about your future. So put away money. If you cannot put away money right now, I understand, by the way, 10% might be too much for a lot of people. But you could definitely do this. If you don't know how to save, by the way, one of the things that I always like to do is just grab a piggy and put cash in it and forget about it. You'll be surprised how much money ends up there. Then, when you take it out, don't go spend it. You need to wait and save it. Alright, so start thinking about your retirement and save about 10% a year. Savings. You gotta have to have a good financial future and become money aware. You need to have about 6 months of expenditures saved for a rainy day. Rainy days happen all the time. I know people like to think that they're never going to happen, that we're preparing for something but it's never going to happen. Rainy days happen all the time. Problems happen all the time. Flat tires happen all the time. Breaking down to your vehicle happen all the time. You need to budget for these things that happen all the time that seem to be rare, but they're really not. So, start creating your rainy day fund. Your rainy day fund should be at least 6 months of your expenditures at some point. So you need to start building to that. So if your expenses are, say, $3,000 a month, then you need a rainy day fund of 6 months of that. So 6 times 3,000 or 18,000 is your size of your rainy day fund. Alright? Again, you can adjust the fund depending on your expenses. So if you only spend $1,000 a month, then your rainy day fund only needs to be $6,000 or so. Is my basic for that. Debt. There is good debt and then there's bad debt. What is good debt? Well, good debt is debt that pays you back. This is debt that pays you back. School. When you have a higher degree, your unemployment rate is lower and your income is higher. Getting in debt to go to school is probably good debt. Now, how much do you want to get in debt to go to school? Well, if you're going to graduate from an extremely expensive university, you're going to owe a lot of money. But then if you end up with a degree that doesn't pay, then your income is going to be very little. That's probably not good debt. Good debt is when you start thinking about, alright, so I'm going to get into this debt in order to make sure that this asset eventually pays me money. For example, buying your own place versus renting it from somebody. Generally, the advice is if you buy, you're paying yourself. If you rent, you're paying someone else. So, buying your own property might be a good idea, especially if you're thinking about the future and saying, well, I'm going to rent it later. So, there is good debt and then there's bad debt. What is bad debt? Well, bad debt is everything else, especially consumption that you don't need. So if you get into debt to consume and then after that you got to pay, then it basically becomes a liability. So think about you being on an extremely small budget and then all of a sudden you want to have the biggest TV that they sell on Best Buy. and you want to have the biggest sound this, or you want to have the fastest computer, or you want to have the biggest this or the best video game or whatever, and then you get into debt to do all of that. That is bad debt. All right? So if you're going to get into debt, try to get into good debt, not bad debt. All right? Hopefully you learned a little bit on this video. Again, this is how to become money aware. And it's video number 1 of 5 videos that I'm going to be doing to explain the 5 steps that I was saying to young adults that they should be doing. Thank you for sticking with Professor Choi. Have a good one.